Sure. Yeah. And it's very hard to raise the level of awareness. Often we are quite up against, and it's hard. You have to kind of just, you can't say everything because that would blow their minds. You just have to just be slightly above where they are and raise it up a tiny little bit.
Sehr gut. That's right. I agree. It has to be done in a psychotherapeutic way, which is not to blast them, but what you just said, in increments. And I would suggest we try to do that for the collective human organism. Welcome to Connecting with Coincidence. I am your host, Bernard Beitman, MD. I study coincidences in both my life and the life of you and other people, and including the people who come to the show. I'm going to tell a story happened recently with me. And the idea is to try to tell stories succinctly, so that you understand what I'm trying to tell you. And the coincidence is two events coming together in an improbable, surprising way that's hard to explain. And in this coincidence, I was going through separating and thinking about terminating or getting out of a relationship that was getting increasingly more problematic, a romantic relationship. And so I was kind of sliding out of it. And then along came a nice push that said, Bernie, get out of this. And that's the story. My trying to separate from this woman, and then poof, I get a big push. So after this is the longer part of it, but that's the basic part of it, the two coincidences. So I was going up and down, should I, shouldn't do it. And then I got a text message from the daughter of the high school girlfriend who started a lot of my problems with women. I mean, we can say my mother had something to do with it, but this high school girlfriend had a major impact on me. She, among other things, twisted my emotions around in many different ways. The final thing being her saying she was pregnant. It was not, there's no chance of that really from what we had done, but she said she was pregnant. So I had to think about dropping out of college and not going to college and stuff like that. And then 2 weeks later, she said, no, she's not pregnant. So I ended that relationship. And her daughter wanted to know more. I told her about that and some other things. And the daughter told me that after I had broken up with this high school girlfriend while I was in college, she married someone. And sometime into the marriage, after a year or so, she stabbed this guy. She stabbed her husband. He died at age 26 of the stab wounds and alcoholism. And the daughter said very clearly to me, Bernie, you dodged a bullet, and not getting involved with her. So I dodged a bullet. So I got a little push to dodge another bullet, which was a little easier to get out of. So that current relationship ended. So I got a little push. So that's the way these things work sometimes. I had a need and pop, out of nowhere. And the nowhere came because this daughter had heard my name mentioned on a show or a podcast where somebody was talking about synchronicity and referred to me as a world expert on the subject. And the daughter had heard my name. She contacted me. So there was an explanation after a while, but the timing was superb. And timing is so important with coincidences. And I've written about that in my book, Over My Right Shoulder, Meaningful Coincidences. Please subscribe to our channel if you like this, what we're doing. It really helps tickle the algorithm if you subscribe. Please like what we're doing here and make some comments, and I'll respond to them. Our guest today is Radhule Weininger, who's a Ph.D. In clinical psychology and is in private practice founder of the nonprofit Mindful Heart Programs. She's a teacher of mindfulness, compassion, and non-dual awareness practices, as well as a Buddhist psychology since 1981. She has a special interest in non-dual awake awareness practices. She's published 3 books on these subjects. Her third one, HeartMind, A Guide to Embodied Awakening, is coming out pretty soon. Besides her interest in meditation, Radhule is a Jungian therapist trained in embodied imagination and dreamwork. She's on the faculty of Pacifica University, and together with her husband, Michael Kearney, an author and physician, she's been teaching about self-care and resilience to caregivers locally and internationally over 20 years. Welcome to the show, Radhule.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And it's a pleasure to be talking with a Buddhist psychologist, synchronicity, coincidence person, and you've got some things to be able to tell us. So please start off telling us a coincidence story.
All right. So this was a time when I was in medical school. Actually, I have an MD from Germany, but a Ph.D. from America. So I was in medical school, and I just had come back from India, from a trip to India, where I had stayed in a Buddhist monastery. I had taken a half year off after a big illness, and there I was. And I felt a little bit, not quite knowing how to balance. After all, this was 1981. The spiritual and the mundane, medical school and what I had just learned. And felt a little bit, you might say, lost in translation. And there was one day in a psychiatry rotation, this professor came to me, an older gentleman who had lived 7 years in Indonesia. And he said, "Oh, you're coming back from India." Or I had a mala around my head. And he said, "If you ever in the area, come by my office and we have a chat." And so it was the first time that somebody in Germany in medical school was actually interested in what I had experienced. It was a different time, and, people thought those things were weird. And so one day I remember I was going with my bicycle. It was rainy. I saw on the side of a house, a university building, his name, Professor Wolfgang Pfeiffer. And I thought, maybe I'll just stop in, unannounced. I had not announced myself. I actually didn't even know where his office was. And so wet as I was, I went up the stairs. And as I came in, there Professor Pfeiffer was coming towards me with a tray and 2 cups and a little samovar. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Professor Pfeiffer. I must have come at an inopportune time. You must be waiting for somebody for tea. And he said, No, come in. I have been waiting for you." And it just absolutely mind-boggled me, because I didn't even know where his office was. I was unannounced. Man, how can he be there with a tray and 2 teacups? And then we chatted for 2.5 hours. And for many years, even after I came to America, he was a wonderful, he and his wife were wonderful supports for me. And he really made a wonderful bridge, because he was really accepting of who I was with my journey, which was very rare then in Germany. And he kind of had his, how would I say, protective guiding hand over me. But this coincidence was just, actually, it was just later that I thought, this was really weird. And I much later learned about Jungian psychology and coincidences, and it took a while to integrate this, but it certainly was a very wonderful, strange coincidence.
Well, coincidences are two events coming together in an unexplainable way that have meaning to us. And this fits that definition. But you are a seeker and trying to figure out stuff. So how do you think it happened that he was expecting you?
I have no idea. I just know from my own psychological, spiritual learning for the last it's now 43 years, really, that there seems to be, just in my little explanation, something I might call personal reality and universal reality. And they are both true. It's a little bit like quantum physics, where the light can be seen as particle and as wave. It's both true. It's a true paradox. And so I think there are these fine bridges between what we might call mundane or personal reality and what we might call universal or ultimate reality. In personal reality, things are separate. They are a cup is a cup. They are very concrete and measurable. At least we think they are. And in universal reality, everything is change. Everything is just, in a way, energy with different density, and we don't really know how, and it seems to be full of wisdom and actually love, but we don't know how these two levels of reality are connected. Different religions have different hypotheses. The Christians say this, the Jews say this, the Muslims say this, but I think it's the great mystery. But I'm still one of our teachers, a Native American guy, Wolf Wapipa, says synchronicities are breadcrumbs of the gods. I love that. The breadcrumbs of the gods.
And when breadcrumbs comes from a fable, and a myth, the childhood stories of following the breadcrumbs to someplace.
Well, actually, it's Hansel and Gretel, and you follow the breadcrumbs home. So I would say universal reality, for me, I call it sometimes home. And so how do we find our way home?
So synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, are breadcrumbs to home, to universal reality.
Yeah, yeah. Where probably we go back to when we die, and where we come out of. And in the middle is this human story.
Well, let's say these breadcrumbs are ones that we can follow, like Hansel and Gretel, while we're here, and that we don't have to die necessarily to get there. Although
Right.
that can be that's an express train to that place, whatever that is, if it's a place, but that mind. But please tell us how synchronicities might be like breadcrumbs, because one of the terms you use is bridge between regular reality and universal reality. Bridge, breadcrumbs are two of your metaphors. So please elaborate on those.
Well, there are, I think, who was this? The Jungian analyst Johnson, I think he called it slender threads. Slender threads between the great mystery, whatever we might call it, and mundane reality. And in some ways, there are different bridges. One of the bridges is the heart. the metaphorical heart, not the blood pump as we physicians know, but the energetic heart. The heart exists on different levels, as a pump to pump blood, as an electrical thing, as a biochemical thing, as a energetic thing. But it's also an organ of psycho-spiritual connection, an emotional hub, a spiritual hub, and we don't really know how it is there. And in some ways, I'm quite excited by the not knowing. As scientists, as humans, we like to know and have evidence. But I always thought that what we don't know is, in a way, even more exciting.
I, I get excited by what we don't know, but I also like to know more about what we don't know. I mean,
Right.
so I don't stop, and I don't think you do, at, oh, I'm excited by the mystery. I think
Yeah.
I'm excited by the mystery because there's mystery to unfold. It's like being able to like follow the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
It's like examine the bridge. Uh, and I examine the bridge called synchronicity, meaningful coincidences. So that's
Mhm.
what I'm asking you about, is how do those meaningful coincidences in your life particularly, but other people's lives, so that who are listening and watching us, how does that,
Connect.
yeah.
Yeah. There's a wonderful quote by Suzuki Roshi. He said, the miraculous to happen is an accident, but practice makes us accident prone. So I think a certain readiness to coincidences or to these slender threads helps. Like for me in the last 43 years, it has been my meditation practice, getting more and more comfortable with this, whatever we want to call it, with the sacred or with the field of awareness. Um, and for myself, my meditation practice definitely makes me less dense, you might say, and more accident prone to the miraculous. But it can also be an open mind and open heart, to not discount those things that happen. But I think I don't answer your question. You asked, how does it happen? Um, hmm.
Well,
uh,
let's leave that for a second, because you did answer my question, and I think it's worth, in part. I try to remember what you just were talking about, because, well, what open mind, open heart, and less dense. These are transformations in yourself that increase the likelihood of meaningful coincidences taking place. So I think we're talking about how it happens is how you help make it happen. Uh, New?
like for example, another very important road for me have been dreams, because dreams lead to a deeper reality. Not only there was this amazing Indian sage, my husband, who is a palliative care physician, once met in India. Actually, Michael had written an article about death of images, dreams of dying people, and he got this letter from India, and so he traveled there. So Sri Mataba Ashish said, first in dreams we polish a mirror. First, dreams are a mirror, and as we polish the mirror becomes a window. And there, when we are at the window, we are back with synchronicities and this bridge between ultimate and personal reality. So if we allow dreams not only to be a mirror, but a window, then they are an amazing bridge between those different levels of reality.
I understand that, and the value of dreams. My way of doing it seems to be that life is a dream. Uh,
Oh, yeah, it
that
is.
It's like a dream, I'm going to say. I'm not going to say it is a dream. It could be somebody dreaming us. It could be a computer game that somebody's made, a virtual reality that someone's done, a simulation. It could be those things, a dream in those forms. But just the idea that what happens with us now are like dreams, and the coincidences are like events in dreams that connect us, can connect us to a wider reality.
Yeah, well, okay, I have some thoughts about that. Um, there is I think it's called in Buddhism, the mind only school, where everything is seen as a dream, like as a fata morgana, and we just have to uh, kind of understand that. But I think we could easily get a little bit to a spiritual bypass with that and not take our suffering serious. So I think it's true, but it's also, they have one term which I really like. It's insubstantial. Everything is insubstantial yet occurring. And what is also, man, I really love that. It's like a koan, insubstantial yet occurring. And really wrap your mind around that one. I think it's really interesting. And the thing is, this, whatever the field of sacredness is, we all come out of this field of awareness, or however you like to call this, the groundless ground. It has certain attributes. It has the attribute of knowing and of open-heartedness. So it's not cold, it's not detached. We couldn't just say it's all a dream, so nothing matters. Israel and Gaza and Ukraine and Russia, it doesn't matter. It's just a dream. It's not what we think it is. It may be insubstantial, but it's still occurring, and it's still suffering that needs to be tended to. So it's a real tricky one.
I don't think it's that tricky in the sense that you describe. Yeah, it's insubstantial, and in a way, it doesn't matter. You could say that. But that's the duality that we're talking about. And here it really does matter. And the idea of spiritual bypassing is increasingly happening as people are saying, I'm going to get enlightened. And
Yeah.
that's going to make everything okay because I'm enlightened. And
Right. And I'm really against that, even though for 40 whatever years I study this, and actually non-dual meditation, where many people are just for enlightenment. I think, but there is the Bodhisattva path. We have to come back. And actually this summer, I'm traveling to India and have a little audience with the Dalai Lama to talk just about that, because I want to get his encouragement and permission to use these really powerful practices to be more helpful here in life. Not to go for that spiritual bypass, but to say we can use these practices to actually to be a medic in Gaza, so we don't get burned out. Because if we hold this wider reality, when if we our operating system is not in the small self but in the wider reality, then we can be with the particular suffering in a way that's much more effective.
I have an addition to that.
Okay, I love it.
And I hope you'll bring this up to the Dalai Lama, because I would like to know what he thinks about this. That just doing the practices and going to Gaza and being able to manage, just the way Jews have had to do that in concentration camps in the 1940s, as Man's Search for Meaning, the book suggested.
Yeah.
Say the name of the author.
Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl. As Viktor Frankl was able to manage being in those horrible circumstances, you're saying something like what a help person in Gaza might be able to do, and what even people in Gaza might be able to do. These are individual practices that are very, very important. I am trying to suggest that we think of ourselves as a collective human organism.
Yeah, I love that.
And
My interdependence. Yeah.
interdependent. And synchronicity demonstrates, like your connection with the person who was expecting you.
Mm-hmm.
There was a connection that the synchronicity revealed to both of you, and it became a wonderful experience to know each other over the years that you have known each other, supportive for each of you. And Rumi was a poet that said, among other things, what you're looking for is also looking for you, which is
Yeah, exactly.
what happened. Okay, well, that's synchronicity, but you're connected with him. What I'm looking for is a recognition of our being a collective human organism with each of us cells in that organism.
Yeah, like Indra's net.
That's bigger than what I'm thinking about. But
Okay.
it's definitely like Indra's net, the web that connects us all. But I'm still trying to not get that spiritual because it gets out there. But the idea of the web or net, yes, we're connected with each other. And
Right.
there were each little facets on that web of the collective human organism. The reason I say that
Yeah.
is
No, I totally get you. I absolutely agree. And we are. And there is this one wonderful term in Buddhist philosophy. And I'm not mired to Buddhism. We can be wider, and
yeah.
the truth is a pathless land. But that Krishnamurti who said that. But it's called dependent co-rising. Everything is interdependently co-rising with everything else in a kind of meaningful way, but without somebody doing the computer program. But there is a wisdom and interdependence in meaning in everything.
In everything. And when you do everything, you can get to spiritual bypassing. And that's what I think.
Tell me more.
Well, that's the general idea, just what you're talking about, the bridge, synchronicity as a bridge between the greater reality and life here on earth, but as you say it, in heaven and earth. We are here on earth, you,
Mm-hmm.
me,
Yeah.
and we human beings are, as a collective human organism, destroying our planet.
We are, yeah.
Well,
Unfortunately, last night I actually went to a talk by Simard, the mother tree.
oh,
Suzanne Simard. She's one of the main people who writes about mycorrhizae and the interconnection between everything. Yeah.
with Michael Rising, it's not everything, it's among the trees.
It's
And
amongst. Yeah.
And I'm trying to say that's also potentially true among human beings.
Oh, okay. Tell me more. I love to understand it better.
I love trees. I have conversations with three trees that are near here. I'm going to see them again on Saturday, and feeling their connection underground with each other is
Yeah.
a metaphor for what human beings can do with each other.
Yeah. 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 That's right. And unfortunately, we humans are stuck in the delusion of separateness.
And us humans are stuck in the delusion of separateness, which we are separate, but we're also part of something much bigger.
That's again the paradox.
It's again the paradox. And human beings have a lot of trouble being enlightened and everything's one,
Mhm.
or being separate and it's just me.
Yeah, actually, do you know one of my very good friends and mentors is Joanna Macy?
Don't know her.
She's a Buddhist scholar and social environmental activist. She's now 95, actually. But she wrote, I don't know how many books, and teaches still 1,000 people around the world on podcasts. She's amazing. But she talked about mutual differentiation. She was very much into systems theory.
Yeah,
And she wrote one book, it's called Mutual Causality and Systems Theory. It's a bit of a dense book, but it's really amazing. It was her dissertation. And I like this idea of mutual differentiation. We are not the same. We are all differentiated, but there is a mutuality within
absolutely.
that.
That's what I'm trying to say. Um, that we do our interdependence at the same time continue to evolve our own sense of self.
Hmm. Right, exactly. And and there is a particularity and a mutuality at the same time, no?
Exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's hard for individuals to hold in mind at the
Mm.
same time. That what you just said, the particularity and what
Mutuality.
the mutuality. Well, that's what I'm suggesting about the cells of this collective human organism.
Yeah, and how can we remember? I think one really good translation of the word mindfulness is remembering. We forget. We forget and we get stuck in this delusion of separateness. How can we remember who we really are?
Synchronicity.
Yeah, and 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 dreams and practice and
Lots
yeah,
of things. And
lots of
what I'm doing is saying we can remember, it's not remembering to me, it's recognizing now.
yeah,
That
recognizing now, yeah.
now
But I
it's
think we forgot. I said remembering because we forgot.
yes, and I'm not trying to bring up memories as much as see it right now.
No, no, not memories. It's more like something in us new, probably before we were born. And
I,
then
I, yes, yes, and we don't know that for sure. What we do know is that we're here
yeah,
and that we're showing connections with each other. I'm just staying with what, like, I'm still in the science thing, is like just well, what can you observe now? I mean, we can talk about remembering,
yeah.
which I is valuable thing to talk about. I'm saying we got a problem right now, ladies and gentlemen.
Right. We are having a huge problem, and we unfortunately are on this brink. We are on the brink of destruction, really. And
Self-destruction.
self-destruction. Yeah. And our it's very much about our selfishness, you
Very much
know.
about our selfishness, of the
And
selfishness of a lot of people. Not everyone, but a lot. It's self-centered. It's all those things. And
self-occupation.
and
Mm.
there are so many people saying what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to say what we can do about it.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we all have to do. Yeah.
So I'm suggesting that this collective human organism is stomping on our nest.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Yeah, it's brutal.
It's brutal, and we're doing it to ourselves. Other people are also us. They're part of us, and we're part of them.
I'm just having now one curious question. Do you think your parents came here earlier than I did? You know, I came in 85, and you were born here, right?
1942, yes, here, yes,
And your parents came,
from Germany.
when did they come?
And my mother came in 1933, and my father came in 1937. They met here.
All right. So I was wondering if this post-war German, post-war Jewish, whatever it is bringing up, makes us, we can't just be blasé about it.
Right.
You know, this is serious. And
Yes.
coming from that heritage, my grandfather, he was German, but he was incarcerated by the Nazis as a historian. There is, he spoke up. So there is this thing, never again, you know,
Yes.
and we are seeing it right now happening again.
Yes.
And, and there is a certain super urgency about this. I get
Yes.
it. I totally get it. Yeah.
No, I think you're tuning in to what's driving me.
Yeah.
I was born during the Holocaust,
Right.
and now in various ways it's happening again. And without trying to talk about what that means now, there's in every generation it's been a whole thing, but that's still the past. What can we do about it now? Is what I am facing as a psychotherapist. So I'm writing a book now called the Psychotherapy for the Collective Human Organism.
I love it. That is really cool.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
the point of it is that I can make an analogy, we can make an analogy between the individual self, the mind of the individual self, and the mind of the collective human organism.
So how will you do that? Through coincidences?
Well,
So
let's start with what we know about the collective mind. We know there's a collective consciousness, it's culture,
you mean like Jung talked about the collective unconscious?
and we know there's a collective unconscious.
Yeah. A collective conscious, a collective unconscious, and a world unconscious.
That's what I'm talking about, the human collective unconscious, but there
Yeah.
is a world collective unconscious. There is Gaia, which is part of the whole collective thing that we're part of, and also separate from. But this I can get to that in a minute. But just the metaphor or the analogy between the human mind and the mind of the collective human organism, just this organism that we individuals are cells in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And here's what I'm contributing that's new besides a collective unconscious from Jung and others, a collective consciousness, which is includes culture, among other things, the way everybody thinks the same about or similarly about how to behave and how to think
Yeah.
collectively in common behavior. But I'm now bringing in what hasn't been around from what I could see, but a collective self-observer.
Collective. You know, I have been noticing that, you know, because, you know, I've been writing a few books, and it's very interesting. When I started writing my book about the path of self-compassion, really thinking about that, it took me a while to write because it's my second language. And finally, Jack Cornfield gave me his editor, and finally it came together, and I learned how to write and stuff like that. So I was a little slow. But by the time I had written it, suddenly self-compassion was a huge thing. It wasn't when I started writing, and I was too slow, but by the time it came out 2016, there were already 10 other books. And it's quite interesting now where I'm interested in the non-dual thing. When I started to be interested, nobody was interested, honestly. I just was myself. Like, how many 10-day retreats can I do? I want to find a director path. And so, and now it's like, wow, it's like everywhere. And it's in a way, too slow again. But on the other hand, it's also great because we need it. So, yeah, I have observed that.
You have
There's a
observed you have observed that around the same time, different people are thinking about the same subject, the same idea, which is self-compassion, is what we're talking about partly here. You came up with it. Other people were doing something similar, and you came out when other people had already said it. And the term for that is simultaneous independent discoveries.
Oh, I love that. Simultaneous independent discovery. Yeah, it's kind of, I call it like in physics, you have the term emergent phenomenon.
And that's another way of saying it.
Mm-hmm.
Emergent phenomenon.
Yeah,
I like the term simultaneous independent discoveries because it's like coincidences. That these are happening around the same time. Emergence is a more general term and
yeah,
can describe it. And I think it is a good process that emergence is describing, but the description, I mean, I'm still like a doctor. I try to say categories. Simultaneous independent discoveries are very common in human history.
yeah.
Calculus was founded at the same time by two different people. Evolution was Darwin and Wallace came up with it around the same time. In 1920s, there was a paper about how
Mm-hmm.
many of them there were already, and they're
Mm-hmm.
still happening. Simultaneous independent discoveries. And that's an illustration of our collective consciousness, which is evolving. The collective mind is evolving, and we're all noticing the same thing around the same time. That's collective consciousness.
Yeah, but isn't there also something else, which is, it seems, awareness that's already there is like the oxygen.
What do you,
it
what explain, please?
well, I think everything happens within this matrix, you might want to say it,
Yeah.
of this field of being and becoming.
Hmm.
And that also puts in its bit, through synchronicities. Mind, they are not man-made. You know what I mean?
No.
It's a co-rising
Oh,
of,
yeah. Co-arising. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, you're a therapist, so you know that you use the self-observer of the patient as well as yourself to get the patient to look at his or her own mind.
yeah, yeah,
And you and then you connect up with the self-observer of the patient to look together at the mind of the patient.
uh-huh.
So it's a collaborative effort of two self-observers.
Yeah.
And I'm suggesting that the collective human organism can develop its own self-observer to look at the patterns by which humanity is self-destructing.
Yeah. Yeah. We are just up against a lot. It's like when you think of Viktor Frankl and Martin Buber, and then the whole human potential movement that came basically out of this World War II experience.
That's right. That's right.
They went very far in their insights. But then, even though it has kind of trickled down and it's still, some of it is alive, it also was a little bit forgotten.
Yeah.
And it feels almost like I wish we could resurrect Viktor Frankl and Martin Buber and all those amazing minds, and because we need them now.
How would you do that?
What did you say?
How would you do that? How would you bring them back?
Well, man, I sometimes write little essays. It's like when I get really frustrated. Man, I write my Psychology Today blog, as you know. But I also sometimes write some more. Actually, I just wrote an essay, Reflections of a Post-War German. And I just got accepted by the newspaper here. Or sometimes I wrote an essay, life worthy of living. And I was really kind of reflecting on what lives do we regard as worthy of living, and how we have so often double standards. And I actually then really reread Viktor Frankl and Martin Buber and Viktor Frankl, saying just a few days or maybe a year after he came out of the camps, saying not one human is more worthy than another. And how we have to remember that again. And so maybe writing little essays, well, it's a drop on a hot stone, but I don't know, there might be more creative ways to do that. Man, this is one. Your podcast is one.
It's one, and it's not enough either. And I agree with you. It's not enough. What I'm saying is that we need collective action.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, how would you see that?
By first insisting that we are a collective human organism, that we have a mind, and that mind has an unconscious and conscious aspect, and it has a self-observer. And together we look at the patterns that need to be changed, not one at a time, not one person at a time. That's important for each of us to elevate our consciousness and become less dense vibrationally, but to recognize that we can look at our collectively at our own collective mind and do something like what you do as a therapist.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, there's also a collective mind that does the opposite. When you see what's happening, I think in your neck of the woods, where you, Virginia, it's like in some areas of the South where, the whole MAGA thing, it's like where it seems people press each other down. And everybody thinks now you can stop abortion at week 6 or whatever, or other things, where it's like collective stupidity sets in, or which we saw with the Nazis, with the stormtroopers, going around and harassing people like my grandfather, beating them up. And so it's almost like collective stupidity against collective intelligence.
You're a therapist. Have you not seen the same thing happen with some of your patients?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And it's very hard to raise the level of awareness. Often we are quite up against, and it's hard. You have to kind of just, you can't say everything because that would blow their minds. You just have to just be slightly above where they are and raise it up a tiny little bit.
Sehr gut. That's right. I agree. It has to be done in a psychotherapeutic way, which is not to blast them, but what you just said, in increments. And I would suggest we try to do that for the collective human organism.
Yeah, man, I love this idea. And there are some, did you hear about the World Upshift program?
I'm going to interview its founder next month.
Yeah, Eric Casalia, Michael, my husband, just did a fireside chat, and they invited me, and so, man, there are different people. Or Michael, now being half retired, he started a Becoming Forest project. How deep resilience in difficult times. So. And I mean, we have 7 years ago, we started our little nonprofit, which is mainly about making meditation available for free. But there are also, every Sunday, we have basically a big town hall meeting where we give a PowerPoint talk and do a meditation, have a big discussion. It's a very international group. We have a lot of Europeans joining. So, yeah, I think people are trying. So it's more like, how can we find each other? And I think your podcasts are one way of doing that. You're able to find people by rummaging through Psychology Today, or and so you're definitely right. We have to connect the dots.
I like that rummaging through. It's true. It's very true. It's very true. No, what you're doing sounds marvelous. The things you just described,
Yeah.
that you and your husband are doing in the group. I would like to see what you're doing connected more clearly with other people doing something similar.
Me too. I don't know how to get that. It feels almost like I have my hands stuck in arms that are kind of sewn shut, and I want to kind of,
Yeah, yeah, and that's what I'm looking for, is being able to find other people who are looking for connections with other people, to be able to do something more collectively about
Mm,
what we're doing, and not just yourself by
mhm,
yourself or with groups that you're doing, but
mhm.
a wider net where it's a lot more simple and a lot clearer about what we're attempting to do.
And I love that. And also, I think one confounding factor is that many people who get into whatever self development stuff, they cash in big time.
Cash in big time. You're right. You're
And
right.
I'm just, that's why I keep my private, man, I love my private practice, but that's also one reason I do it. So I don't have to charge for spiritual teaching, because it's kind of obnoxious, and yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah,
then it becomes capitalism. It becomes, a consumer product.
Yeah, it does. I know exactly what you mean. You cash in, you get more famous. People want to see you. You show up. I know very well a couple of guys like that who are like celebrities in the
Yeah,
whole thing.
me too. Yeah.
And the more they get famous, the less their contributions are, because they get more self-involved. It's a difficult process. And what you're saying and what you're doing is what has to happen. It has to be done out of your heart, but there has to be a way of supporting people who are doing the work as well. So that's a bit of a trick. But I'm just at the place of saying, hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're each cells in this collective human organism. And we are intertwined, interconnected, interdependent. It's not just you by yourself. It's not just you doing your wonderful work as you are, but there
Mhm.
are other people doing similar things. And the problem we run into, which is the problem of many spiritual organizations, is they spiritually bypass the problems of the interpersonal problems. So we're talking about psychotherapists like you get
Mhm.
also coming together, not just psychotherapists, to help people get along with each other better.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. There is here something in Santa Barbara now. It's a wonderful idea. I don't know how well it will be translated. It's called um, the Empathy Center. So where they use basically Rogerian listening techniques, but in groups with people who have different opinions. Let's say Democrats and Republicans, people pro and con. And you basically, stuff like that is very useful.
It is. That's marvelous. I very much appreciate your telling me about it because
Yeah, I
you're,
can connect you to the man because his brother, who's very wealthy, bought a whole huge retreat center, that sleeps 200. It's an old seminary with an amazing view. It still has a little bit how would I say, the aesthetics of an old Catholic seminary, but it's a great, great place. And well, come out here. I introduce you. Mine, it's ready to do something with. It's standing there basically empty. And man, I'm glad because I snagged one room and I can give my retreats there. But and it's about to be opened for overnights or weeks or weekend. But it needs it's basically restored, but it needs help and furniture and everything. And so, yeah, that, for example, that empathy center is, it's ready, and his idea is to have it be an educational institution to promote empathy or people from different areas to talk to each other
yeah,
with different opinions. So,
yeah,
and to do other stuff up there, it doesn't have to just be his
yeah,
thing.
yeah, 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 yeah. Empathy is a start. Listening to another person and seeing what they think is fundamental to what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and he developed over the last 15 years an amazing, very simple, very workable methodology. Like he goes to hotspots like Occupy Berkeley, and he has Republicans and Democrats talk to each other. He went actually to Congress. He does amazing things. He's kind of a white. Actually, he's a post-war German guy. Actually, he was born here, but his parents came from what is Russia now. And so he has that's how I found him. He has that same never again, I can't just live my bubble life attitude. Edwin is his name. So yeah, I introduce you to him. Come
Please
out
do.
here and
Where where are you?
Santa Barbara.
Oh, it's a nice place. Santa Barbara's a nice place.
Yeah, come over. Yeah, come visit. And so we would love that. And yeah, I would like to have nothing more than connect and to, work on. I'm actually quite a good group therapist. I wrote my dissertation about it, 1990. But I also led groups for people with AIDS in the Castro in the late 80s. Many, many different groups at Esalen and here and there. So groups are, it's just, they're harder to organize now. And when I had kids, it's easier. But I'm ready to lead groups, yeah. And so I just, the logistics were a little bit my obstacle.
Of course. Well, we have gone for about an hour, which is about time for us to stop. But so we can keep talking afterwards. But this has been a wonderful opening for me, listening to you and hearing what you're up to and how you're thinking. So, I thank you very much, Radhule, for talking with me today.
Oops. I'm curious how people who are listening will take this.
Well, we may see. I hope they respond, but at least we had a good conversation. We'll see what they do too. I'll send you the link once it gets published about about a month from now.
Yeah, we have a monthly newsletter, which is not huge. It's maybe like 3,000 people, but quite a lot actually read it because I always write an essay in it, and many people just read it for the essays. But
well, maybe they'll look at this one too.
Yeah, and I think I will put the link into the newsletter.
Very good, very good. Well, thank you again, and I think you're doing very good work bridging Earth, life, and heaven. So, thank you very much, Radu.
Yeah, and if you want to ever come out here, it would be lovely. Come out for a weekend. We have you here, and let's plot how we go. I think Michael, my husband, who's an Irishman, actually, he came here 25 years ago. Actually, I got him here. When we met on a dream conference, that was another synchronicity. But yeah, so I think it would be wonderful. And you probably have a group of people you work with over there, or
I'll tell you about that when we
when we
leave
meet.
when we leave the podcast. I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Oh, you're still on the podcast?
So I mean, when we leave this, so we must say Auf Wiedersehen at this time.
Tschüsschen.
This psychosphere is our mental atmosphere, like a hologram of cosmic consciousness.